Andrew Little, good morning.
Good morning.
So the situation here, does Labour support the Kermadec sanctuary?
We have supported the legislation up to now. We had assumed that the government had done its homework before John Key announced the establishment of the sanctuary in the UN last year. And now it turns out that they've completely mishandled the entire thing. The issue here, I know, is characterised in that report just now as a treaty right. It's actually, I think, bigger than that. This is the abdication of a treaty settlement, an agreement reached between the Crown and Māori interests that the government wants to legislate over the top of. And that is serious. And I think, we do have to take notice of that. And the government just has to get this sorted out before they pass that legislation.
OK, so did Labour, did your Māori caucus not realise that this legislation was cutting across that?
It went under examination at the Select Committee. It then became apparent that there was the 1992 treaty settlement that the legislation was cutting across. These things often don't become apparent until the legislation is closely examined, which is why Labour's response to the Select Committee report was to support it with significant reservations, but also to promote a couple of amendments or supplementary order papers that preserves the right of Te Ohu Kaimoana to pursue its legal rights in court. And that's got to be a bottom line. Either the government has got to get this sorted out, negotiate creatively to get a solution, or Te Ohu Kaimoana and other Māori interests have got to have the right to test those rights in court. Labour learnt this from foreshore and seabed. We don't want to see a repeat of the same mistake again.
So if you were in power, what would be on the table?
I don't know the full details of what it is that Te Ohu Kaimoana has tabled, or indeed what the government has tabled, but it seems to me it can't possibly be beyond the realm of those negotiating to either look at alternative places where the fishing rights that were part of the 1992 settlement can be exercised elsewhere, or if it comes to it, some form of compensation.
But you're pulling support.
Well, I have to say, at this stage, given the issue and the government's failure to deal with it, I can't guarantee we will continue to support it. The government has got to know that when a settlement is reached, because every other iwi who has got a settlement is looking at this.
Okay,
and they want to know that those settlements have integrity.
Well, let's look at this another way. What needs to happen to guarantee Labour's support?
The government's got to resolve the issue between Te Ohu Kaimoana and any other Māori interests that are saying the 1992 settlement has been breached. You've got credit where credit is due. We've got in Christopher Finlayson probably one of the most outstanding treaty negotiation ministers we've ever had. He's got to be involved, but he's got to have the backing of John Key and Bill English and the rest of that national cabinet. Otherwise, all of his work, his mahi, his mana is at stake, and that's not good for the future of treaty relations in New Zealand.
So if it goes ahead without those questions being resolved to your satisfaction, if Labour gets into power at the next election, would you overturn it?
Well, I think that it gets to the point at the point where the legislation is coming to be passed. We've still got a second reading, we've got the committee stages, we've got the third reading to go through yet. I cannot guarantee that we can continue to support it if those issues aren't resolved.
Have you spoken at all to Te Ohu Kaimoana about this?
I haven't spoken with them personally, no. I know that members of our Māori caucus have. I was going to
say, so have some of your Māori MPs been in touch with them, and what is their advice that they're giving to you?
Well, they're saying this is a serious issue for all Māori, particularly the iwi who have reached settlement with the Crown over the last 20 or 30 years, because they're saying if this settlement, the 1992 settlement over fisheries, isn't respected and doesn't have integrity, then what treaty settlement does? And that creates huge problems for us in the future.
So essentially you're supportive of the Māori Party position on this at this stage?
Well, I'm not quite sure what the Māori Party position is. They say they're in talks. They say they're negotiating with the government. I mean, they're not a party to the 1992 treaty settlement. What's important is that the government, as the Crown, gets real and settles this issue over the putative Kermadec sanctuary with the Māori interests who have rights under that 1992 agreement over it.
So from your position, is it right to say that the rights of Māori and the treaty trump the environmental benefit of this sanctuary?
No, what I'm saying is that a 1992 settlement, an agreement between the Crown and Māori interests, has to have integrity, and upholding that is a matter of upholding the rule of law. That's a basic constitutional principle that the Crown must observe.
So does this put you on a different side of the argument then from the Green Party? Now, Morning Report's asked the Green Party twice in the last few days to come on the programme and to speak about this, and both times they've declined. Is their position on this untenable?
Well, I don't speak for the Green Party, so
No,
I don't know where they're at.
But you have a memorandum of understanding.
Sure.
So what discussion has occurred between Labour and the Greens on this, if any at all?
Well, what I can say is they share the same concerns that we have. Of course, we want to see the sanctuary in place. I mean, it's been Labour's policy for some years. As Nick Smith is quite happy to point out. What Nick Smith doesn't point out is that he thought he could get away with it by not respecting Māori rights. So I can't speak for the Green Party, but what I can say is that it is, we cannot allow the traducing of an agreement between the Crown and Māori in the way that the national government is trying to do now. That should never be allowed. And it is within the power of the government, through people like Chris Finlayson, to actually get a creative agreement sorted and settled so we can proceed with a great sanctuary in the Kermadec.
Thank you very much for your time this morning, Andrew Little.